Winter 1978. The northern wind howled. It wasn't a polite wind. It was a thief slipping through every crack in the old green train's frame, stealing warmth and leaving behind a sharp, crystalline cold. It whipped snowflakes against the windows with sounds like handfuls of gravel thrown by an angry ghost. The carriage, a metal beast shuddering its way back toward the city, was packed solid. Bodies pressed together, returning educated youths with hollowed cheeks and dreamy eyes, soldiers' wives clutching cloth-wrapped bundles, and families of officers wrapped in thick blue-gray cotton coats. The air was a fog of white vapor, each breath a tiny, desperate cloud. I was one of them. I leaned against the hard, icy metal wall, my head lolling with the train's rhythm. A violent jolt, a screech of wheels on a frozen switch, slammed me sideways. My skull cracked against a protruding bolt. Pain, sharp and white-hot, split through my head. For a moment, the world dissolved. Then the floodgates opened. Countless images, sharp as shards of glass, exploded in my mind. A life I had already lived. Tears on a divorce certificate. The back of my son as he was led away. A woman with crescent moon eyes, wearing a Dacron blouse I had begged for. Humiliation. Loss. Emptiness. Did you hear? This time, the return to city policy is really lenient. The soldiers' families even get priority job placements. The voice was young, bright, ignorant. Two young women with thick braids and pink cheeks whispered beside me, clutching flimsy slips of paper, their return permits, stamped with the glorious seal of approval. Really? That's wonderful. My fiancé is a platoon leader. If I get a priority placement, maybe I can work at the neighborhood factory. The other chirped, her eyes shining with a future so close she could taste it. Exactly. But I heard the army's gotten really strict lately. Especially about conduct. If someone cheats while married, it doesn't just hurt their promotions. They'll actually be disciplined. Their words were a key. Not just any key, but the key to a door I had been locked behind for an entire miserable lifetime. The fog in my head cleared, leaving behind a cold, crystalline clarity. I looked down at my hands. They were resting in my lap, pale and slender. The knuckles were smooth. The skin was soft. There were no calluses. No deep, cracked lines from frozen well water. No tiny scars from mending coarse burlap sacks or pulling stubborn radishes from frozen ground. These were not the hands of the woman I had been. These were the hands of the woman I was now. Slowly, I reached toward my chest. Inside my worn cotton coat, pressed tightly against my racing heart, was a small cloth pouch. My fingers brushed against something stiff, rectangular. The edges were sharp. It was the photograph. The one I had found hidden in Daniel's desk drawer in my previous life, the one that had confirmed my worst suspicions. Daniel Chen and Vivian Lee, smiling intimately in each other's arms, her crescent eyes full of smug triumph. I had been reborn. Reborn into the winter of 1978. This was the very day my previous nightmare had begun. My name is Lisa Chen, and I was returning from the countryside. The memories of my past life surged back, not as a flood, but as a carefully catalogued dossier of pain. 3 years ago, my husband, Daniel, had been promoted. The regiment leader, with a face of official concern, had declared that a soldier's wife needed rural re-education to temper her proletarian spirit. So he sent me and our 2-year-old son to a desolate village in the north. For 3 years, I became a beast of burden. I farmed frozen soil. I fed stinking pigs. I mended clothes under a dim kerosene lamp until my eyes burned. I worked myself nearly to death. Daniel's letters came infrequently, and his money even less so. The visits home. I could count them on one hand. Last winter, I had managed to return to the city for a single day to finalize some paperwork. I saw them. Daniel, his arm wrapped possessively around a young woman's waist. They were at the fabric counter of the supply and marketing co-op, laughing. The woman was Vivian Lee, his subordinate sister. She had those crescent moon eyes, and she wore a shiny sky blue Dacron blouse. The exact style I had begged Daniel to buy me for half a year. I had rushed over, my heart a shattered pot. I confronted him, my voice shrill with a hurt I couldn't control. He had looked at me as if I were a stranger, a nuisance. She's just a relative, he said, his voice flat. She's helping me choose fabric for a comrade's wife. Then he accused me of being petty, unreasonable, a paranoid country wife. Later, I found the photos. I learned the truth. They had been together for a long time. After I returned from the countryside, I had tried everything to win him back. I cooked, I cleaned, I deferred to him in every way. I gave up a job opportunity the commune had offered me. a chance at independence, because he said a good wife should focus on her family. I had believed, with the desperate, stupid faith of a drowning woman, that if I just worked hard enough, loved him enough, he would remember the woman he married and come back to me. He did not. He came back with a piece of paper. A cold, formal divorce certificate issued by the army. "We're just not compatible, Lisa," he said, as if commenting on the weather. "I can't live like this anymore." When I refused to sign, he fought me for custody of our son. He went to the regiment leaders, the commune officials, everywhere, painting a picture of me as a woman broken by the countryside, mentally unfit, withdrawn. He said our son needed a stable, urban mother. He won. I lost everything. Not just my son, but the 50 yuan compensation he had promised, a pittance he never intended to pay. I watched as Daniel and Vivian took that money, and so much more, to build a new, happy life. I watched my son call another woman mom. The thought made my nails dig deep into my palms. The sharp, grounding pain brought a fierce, glorious clarity. This time I swore to myself, my heart beating a steady, cold rhythm against the photograph. This time I will not make the same mistake. I will not beg. I will not cry. I will not try to win back a man who was never mine to lose. "Comrade, are you all right? You look so pale," one of the young women asked, her earlier gaiety replaced by concern. I shook my head, forcing my stiff lips into a small, watery smile. "I'm fine," I whispered, my voice a ghost of the desperate woman I had been. "Just a little carsick." I clutched the cloth pouch tighter against my chest. The photo inside felt as heavy as lead. It was no longer a symbol of my heartbreak. It was my weapon. A sharp, beautiful blade forged in the fires of my past life's suffering. It was the key to making Daniel Chen and Vivian Lee pay the price they owed. The train began to slow, its brakes hissing like a tired dragon. Through the frost-rimmed window, I saw the city emerge from the winter haze. Tall smokestacks from state-owned factories belched gray smoke into the pale sky. Row after row of gray, identical apartment buildings stood like silent soldiers. The carriage came alive with chatter. People packed their belongings, laughing, crying, congratulating one another on their safe return. But a cold, hard winter had settled permanently in my heart. I knew Daniel would be waiting at the station. Just like before, dressed in his crisp, immaculate uniform, the insignia of a regimental commander gleaming on his shoulders. And in his hand would be that folded piece of paper. The divorce certificate. He would offer it to me without a shred of warmth or hesitation. The train shuddered to a final, absolute stop. The doors screeched open, and a blast of icy wind carrying 1,000 tiny needles of snow rushed in. I pulled my scarf tighter and followed the slow-moving crowd down the metal steps onto the long, concrete platform. The cold was a physical shock, a baptism of ice. I found him in one glance. He was standing at the far end of the platform, away from the happy reunions, isolated like a gray stone in a river of joy. He looked just as I remembered. The perfectly pressed olive green uniform, the gleaming brass buttons, the hat set at a precise, authoritative angle. His hair was combed neat, not a strand out of place. His face was a mask of bureaucratic indifference. There was no flicker of joy, no relief that his wife of 5 years and the mother of his son had returned from 3 years of hard labor. He looked at me as if I were a task to be completed. I walked toward him. My footsteps were steady on the crunchy, frozen snow. With every step, the sound of my own boots was a drumbeat of a new resolve. When I was 3 feet away, he didn't ask, "How was the journey?" He didn't ask, "Where is our son?" He didn't even say, "Hello, Lisa." Without a word of greeting, he reached into the inner pocket of his greatcoat and pulled out a neatly folded, official-looking piece of paper. The red letterhead of the People's Liberation Army was stark against the white paper. "Lisa," he said, his voice flat and devoid of any emotion. "These past 3 years, while you were in the countryside, things haven't been working between us. I've had the army issue a divorce certificate. You should sign it." He held it out to me. His hand didn't tremble. In my previous life, this moment had shattered me. I had stared at that paper, the word divorce a physical blow to my stomach. I had burst into tears, grabbed his arm, and begged him to reconsider. I had made a public spectacle of my own misery. This time, I simply reached out and took it. My fingers were steady. I unfolded the paper, my eyes scanning the cold official language. There it was. The terms. He voluntarily gave up custody of our son. He would compensate me with 50 yuan. 50 yuan. For 5 years of marriage, 3 years of exile, and the loss of my child. An insult wrapped in an official seal. I raised my head and met Daniel's eyes. For a fleeting second, a crack in his mask, I saw a flicker of unease. He had expected tears. He had prepared his little speech of cold justification. My calmness unsettled him. Without a word, I pulled a small, black fountain pen from my cloth pouch, the one my mother had given me as a leaving gift, the one I had saved for important documents. I uncapped it, leaned the paper against my thigh for a hard surface, and signed my name with a clean, swift stroke. Lisa Chen. The nib scratched against the paper. It was the sound of a chain breaking. Daniel froze. He stared at the signed certificate, then at my face, his jaw going slack. He blinked several times as if trying to process a glitch in reality. "Why you signed it?" Just like that, he stammered, the practiced composure crumbling. I handed the signed certificate back to him, my fingers brushing his. The corner of my mouth curled into a small, cold smile when he had never seen on my face before. It was the smile of a woman who had nothing left to lose because she had already lost everything and found her way back. "Since you think we can't go on, Commander Chen," I said, my voice low and clear, each word a drop of icy water, "why should I force it? You've made your position perfectly clear. But let's make one thing clear in return. You'd better keep every promise written on that paper." Without another glance at his stunned, pale face, I turned and walked toward the exit of the station, toward the military family housing area. The northern wind cut across my cheeks like shards of glass, but I didn't feel the cold. My heart was a furnace burning with cold, beautiful satisfaction. The first step was taken. From this moment on, my counterattack had officially begun. The red brick path of the housing compound was a narrow canyon walled by snow. The snow crunched under my boots, a satisfying, rhythmic crunch, crunch, crunch. I clutched the cloth pouch to my chest, Daniel's pathetic 50 yuan promise now a secondary concern. The real treasure was inside, along with my pen. As I turned the corner past the communal water pump, I saw Mrs. Zhang standing at her gate, vigorously sweeping snow off her front steps with a birch broom. She was a robust woman in her 50s, known throughout the compound for her warm, apple dumpling face and a tongue as sharp as a new razor blade. In my previous life, it was she who had secretly told me about Daniel's late-night meetings and the young woman he often brought home. She had been my only ineffective ally. The moment she saw me, she dropped her broom. It clattered on the ice as she hurried over, her padded coat flapping. "Elisa, you're finally back," she cried, grabbing my cold hands in her warm, rough ones. "My goodness, child, look at you. You've lost so much weight and your face is so pale. You must have suffered in the countryside all these years." She peered behind me. "Where's the little one? Your son? Didn't he come back with you?" "My son is still in the countryside with my mother," I said, offering her a small, polite smile. "I wanted to get settled first. Once I take care of things here, I'll go bring him back myself." As we chatted, I quietly observed her face. Mrs. Zhang was a walking newspaper of the compound, her ears attuned to every whisper. She was also my best potential ally. That's good," she said, squeezing my hands before lowering her voice conspiratorially. "But Lisa, you be careful, all right?" Lately, she darted a glance toward Daniel's apartment 2 doors down. "Lately, I've seen Commander Chen heading out of town a lot. And he's not alone. There's a young woman with him. Very pretty, with little crescent moon eyes when she smiles. Her name's Vivian Lee, I think. She's the sister of one of his officers. Not long ago, I saw them together at the co-op. He was buying," she paused, her eyes wide with juicy scandal. Maternity clothes. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this, let's continue." My heart didn't break this time. It just confirmed what I already knew. So Vivian was pregnant. That was the real, urgent reason Daniel had rushed the divorce. He needed to legitimize his bastard child. In my last life, I hadn't learned Vivian had given birth to a son until half a year after the divorce. I had foolishly believed they'd only gotten together afterward. Now I saw the ugly truth clearly. Daniel hadn't just fallen in love. He was on a desperate, selfish timetable. "Oh, really?" I said lightly, feigning a sad, bewildered shrug. "Maybe she's just a relative." "Daniel never mentioned anything like that to me, Mrs. Zhang pursed her lips, her eyes glittering with knowing fury. "A relative? Huh? No relative gets that kind of attention." I saw that girl leaving his place the other day, and Daniel had his arm around her waist. They looked exactly like a couple. "And now he asks for a divorce the minute you return?" She shook her head, her chins wobbling. "Something's definitely fishy here. You mark my words." Just as she finished her delicious gossip, I heard the distinct crunch-crunch of boots on snow behind me. I didn't need to turn around. I knew that measured, authoritative stride. "Daniel." The cold air between us thickened instantly. Mrs. Zhang's friendly smile froze on her face, replaced by a look of sour disapproval. Daniel stopped a few feet away, his face dark and stiff with contained anger. He had heard. He glared at Mrs. Zhang. Watch what you say, Zhang, he snapped, his voice tight. You can joke about the food rations, but you cannot joke about people's reputations. Vivian and I are just distant relatives. Don't start your nonsense in front of Lisa, Mrs. Zhang was not a woman easily intimidated. She planted her hands on her wide hips and snorted. Just relatives, huh? You know very well what kind of relatives you are. Lisa followed you to the countryside and suffered for 3 years raising your son. You'd better not do her wrong, Commander Chen, or you'll have me to answer to. She shot him one last, fierce glare, then turned on her heel and marched back into her house, slamming the door for good measure. From inside, I could hear her muttering, shameless. Absolutely shameless. Daniel's face turned an ugly shade of crimson, then a sickly pale. He didn't argue with her. He just muttered, low and defensive, don't listen to her. She's a gossip. An old busybody, he shifted his weight. Let's go home. There's still a lot to unpack, I didn't reply. I simply followed him, my eyes on the back of his immaculate uniform. The walk to our door was 100 miles long. He unlocked the door with a key that still hung on a lanyard from his belt. The moment the door swung open, I was hit by a wave of scent. Jasmine. A cheap, cloying, yet distinctly recognizable perfume. It was the exact brand Vivian Lee always wore. I had smelled it countless times on Daniel's clothes in my previous life, a ghost I had convinced myself was just laundry soap. And there on the gray, standard-issue sofa lay a bright, incongruous spot of color, a pink hand-knitted sweater. It was delicate, clearly not my size, and at the collar was a faint, waxy smudge of pale pink lipstick. I saw the exact moment Daniel noticed it. His eyes flickered with panic, a rapid, frantic blink. He practically lunged across the room, grabbed the sweater, and stuffed it into the crack between the sofa cushions. That, he said, his voice unnaturally loud, that belongs to a comrade's wife. Yes, a comrade's wife. They came by recently for a meeting, and she must have forgotten it. I'll return it tomorrow. I watched his pathetic, clumsy act. The practiced commander, the man who had coldly handed me a divorce paper at the train station, was now sweating over a piece of knitwear. A cold sneer curdled in my heart. A comrade's wife, wearing a pink, lipstick-stained sweater, forgets it on the couch of a recently separated man. He must have thought 3 years in the countryside had turned my brain to straw. Oh, I see, I said, my voice perfectly even. That was thoughtful of you. I picked up my one small bag. I'll start unpacking. We should go to the Civil Affairs Bureau first thing tomorrow morning for the final paperwork. You should get some rest. Daniel clearly hadn't expected my calm, businesslike tone. He blinked again, then nodded stiffly. All right, you do that. I'll be in the study. He practically fled, closing the study door behind him with a soft click. I stood there for a moment, watching the closed door. Then slowly, the corner of my mouth curled into the cold smile I was beginning to enjoy. Instead of unpacking, I went to the dresser. I opened the bottom drawer, the one that was always empty, and took out the photo from my cloth pouch. I held it under the bare light bulbs. Daniel Chen, his arm wrapped around Vivian Lee, both of them leaning against a willow tree on the outskirts of the city. Vivian was wearing a floral print dress, her belly just beginning to show a slight, betraying roundness. Her smile was bright, victorious. This was the same photo I had found in Daniel's locked drawer in my past life. Back then, when I confronted him with it, he had been furious, knocking it from my hand. It was taken by a friend as a joke, he had shouted. You're so paranoid, now the joke was crystal clear. Vivian had already been pregnant then. I tucked the photo back into the pouch, then locked the pouch inside the dresser drawer. Next, I went to the couch, retrieved the pink sweater from its hiding place, and carefully folded it, placing it into a clean plastic bag. Evidence. Beautiful, damning, physical evidence. If Daniel ever tried to deny the affair or, God forbid, fight me for custody again, these would be my swords. After everything was securely hidden, I lay down on the hard, military-issue bed. Sleep was a foreign country. My mind raced. Memories of humiliation, of the long, lonely nights in the countryside, of the searing pain of losing my son, all mixed with the cold, sharp steel of my new determination. I knew that getting the divorce certificate tomorrow was only the first, easiest step. After that, I would claim the 50 yuan compensation. Then I would fight for my child's custody, securing it legally and permanently. And finally, I would make Daniel Chen and Vivian Lee pay for every single moment of their betrayal. I smiled in the dark. This time I was not the victim. I was the architect of their ruins. The next morning, the winter sun was a pale, watery coin in a sky the color of washed-out denim. It offered no warmth, only a pitiless light that exposed every crack in the pavement, every stain on the snow. Daniel and I walked to the Civil Affairs Bureau in silence. He didn't say a single word. His jaw was set, his eyes fixed on some middle distance, his face as dark and threatening as a storm cloud about to break. He walked ahead of me, his long military strides forcing me to half-jog to keep up. It was a final, petty act of dominance. I didn't mind. Let him have his stride. I had something far more valuable: patience. The Civil Affairs Bureau was a low, gray building that smelled of old paper, floor wax, and the faint, sad perfume of broken families. The clerk was a middle-aged woman with wire-rimmed glasses and an expression of profound boredom. She had seen it all. Papers, she said, not looking up. Daniel slid the divorce certificate across the worn wooden counter. I added my own identification, my resident permit, my work registration, the flimsy return permit from the countryside. The clerk put on her glasses. She read through the document slowly, her lips moving slightly. Then she looked up, first at Daniel, then at me. Her eyes, behind the thick lenses, held no judgment, only procedure. "Comrade Chen," she said to Daniel, her voice flat. "You voluntarily give up custody of the child and will compensate the wife, Comrade Lisa Chen, with 50 yuan. Is this correct?" Daniel hesitated. A flicker of something, greed. Regret passed over his face. He glanced at me. I stared back, my face a mask of polite emptiness. After a long, tense 3 seconds, he nodded. "Yes." The clerk turned to me. "Comrade Lisa, you agree to the divorce and accept full custody of the child, along with the 50 yuan compensation?" "Yes," I said. My voice did not tremble. It was as firm and final as a hammer striking a nail. The clerk stamped the document. The sound was a dull, final thump. Then she handed each of us our own red-covered booklets. Divorce certificate. The characters were embossed in gold, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. I took my copy. I opened it. I read the cold, bureaucratic language that officially erased 5 years of my life. And I felt nothing. No, that's not true. I felt a soaring, exhilarating relief. It was like taking off a coat that had been soaked through with freezing water for years. I thought of all the pain, the humiliation, the sleepless nights in my past life, the desperate clinging to a man who had already left me, the pathetic belief that my love could fix him. And I laughed. It was a small sound at first, a choked giggle that escaped before I could stop it. Then it grew. A clear, bright, utterly inappropriate peal of laughter that echoed off the gray walls of the Civil Affairs Bureau. My mother, who had insisted on coming with me, who was hovering worriedly by my elbow, tugged at my sleeve. "Girl," she whispered, her eyes wide with alarm, "don't laugh so loud. People will think you'll give yourself away." Daniel turned to stare at me, confusion and a flicker of suspicion warring on his face. "What?" he asked slowly. "Are you laughing at?" I quickly raised a hand to my eyes, pretending to wipe away a tear. "Oh," I said, my voice thick with false emotion, "it's nothing. The wind got in my eyes on the way here. It's just so cold. My eyes are watering." I couldn't help laughing at myself for being so silly. Daniel frowned. He didn't believe me. I could see the gears turning in his head. But he didn't have the emotional vocabulary to decipher me anymore. I was no longer the weeping, desperate woman he knew. "I still have things to do at the regiment," he said, tucking his own red booklet into his inner pocket. "I'll go first. I'll give you the compensation in a few days." "In a few days," he said, as if it were a generous gift. I watched his hurried back as he strode out of the building. His shoulders were rigid. He didn't look back. I smiled coldly. In a few days, that was code for never. He intended to stall, to dodge, to make me beg for the pittance he owed me. He thought I was the same old Lisa, too proud or too foolish to make a scene. He was wrong. My mother came up beside me and took my hand. Her own hand was warm and rough, calloused from a lifetime of hard work. "Lisa," she said, her voice thick with unshed tears, "you've been wronged. So wronged. But it's all right now. After the divorce, just the two of us, well, the three of us, once we get your son back, we can live well on our own. We don't need him." I squeezed her hand. "I know, Mom. I'm not wronged. I'm relieved. From now on, we won't have to read his face anymore. We won't have to walk on eggshells. We're free." We walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau together, stepping into the pale, cold sunshine. The light fell on my face, and I closed my eyes for a moment, letting it warm my eyelids. A new life. It was beginning. We walked home along the snowy street. The sun filtered through the bare skeletal branches of the locust trees, casting intricate, lace-like shadows on the untouched snow. I clenched the red cover of my divorce certificate in my palm, the edge digging into my skin until it hurt. But inside, I felt as if a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted from my chest. That humiliating, grinding marriage that had buried me alive in my last life was finally, legally, blessedly over. Lisa, my mother said, her breath pluming in the cold air, her steps heavy beside me. Daniel said he'd give the compensation in a few days. I know his kind. He's going to weasel out. Why don't we go to his regimental office right now and ask for it? Catch him off guard. Then we won't have to worry later. I shook my head, carefully slipping the red certificate into my cloth pouch next to the photograph and the plastic bag with the pink sweater. Don't rush, Mom. Right now, he's probably rushing off to see Vivian. To give her the good news. If we go to him now, all angry and demanding, he'll just get defensive. He'll feel justified in dodging us. Let's go home first. Let him relax. Let him think he's won. If there's no news after a couple of days, then we'll take it up with the regiment. Politely. Officially. With witnesses, my mother looked at me, her eyes widening slightly. There was a new look in them, one I hadn't seen before. Respect. When did you get so clever, she asked. Surviving the countryside teaches you a lot, Mom, I said quietly. Mainly that the only person you can rely on is yourself. We reached the housing compound. The stairwell smelled of boiled cabbage and coal dust. As we started to climb the stairs to our second-floor apartment, I heard a woman's laughter from above. It was a sharp, piercing, flirtatious giggle. My blood ran cold then hot. Vivian Lee's voice. My mother and I exchanged a look. We slowed our steps, moving as quietly as possible, our boots making hardly a sound on the worn concrete steps. The sound was coming from Daniel's apartment. Our two homes shared a wall. The construction was cheap, every sound traveled. We stopped on the landing just outside my own door and listened. Daniel, you really divorced her. Just like that. Just like you said you would. Vivian's voice was a childish, sing-song coo dripping with satisfaction. When can I move in? My belly is getting so big. I can't keep staying at my brother's place. It's not proper. People are starting to talk. Soon, Daniel's voice replied. It was several degrees softer than I had ever heard it, almost gentle. After I tidy up a few things, you can move in. I need to make the place look less like a military barracks. More like a home. There was a pause, then Vivian's voice lower, more calculating. What about the compensation? The 50 yuan. Did you give it to her? Another pause. Then Daniel's cold, dismissive voice. Not yet. I told her I'd give it to her in a few days. I'm going to delay it. Stretch it out. Maybe she'll just forget. Or get tired of asking. What can she do? She has no job, no income, a brat to take care of. She's nothing. Hearing this, my mother's face turned purple with rage. Her hands clenched into fists. She took a step toward Daniel's door, ready to pound on it to scream. I grabbed her arm, my fingers digging into the thick padding of her coat. I shook my head, my eyes boring into hers. Not yet. Not here. Not like this. Slowly, carefully, I reached into my cloth pouch. I pulled out the small notebook and pen I had prepared for just this purpose. I flipped to a clean page and wrote down Daniel's words verbatim. I'm going to delay it. Stretch it out. Maybe she'll just forget. She's nothing. This was gold. This was another piece of evidence proving he had never intended to pay. This was proof of his contempt. What if she comes to you? What if she asks the regiment to intervene? Vivian's voice laced with a new anxiety. Let her try. Daniel's laugh was a short, harsh bark. She's a divorced woman with no job, no connections. A peasant from the countryside now. Who's going to listen to her? Besides, I know people in the regiment. I have seniority. Even if she goes whining to the political commissar, I can handle it. I'll make her look like a hysterical woman. I wrote that down too. I can handle it. I'll make her look like a hysterical woman. The nib of my pen pressed hard into the paper, almost tearing it. My mother and I retreated down the stairs, silent as ghosts. We went back to my apartment, closing the door softly behind us. The moment we were inside, my mother could no longer contain herself. She slammed her hand down on the wooden table so hard the teacups rattled in their saucers. That bastard, she hissed. That lying, cheating, heartless bastard. Cheating on you, getting another woman pregnant, and now trying to cheat you out of the one pittance he owes you. It's unforgivable, it is, I agreed, my voice calm. I went to the dresser, unlocked the drawer, and took out the cloth pouch. I laid its contents on the table, the photograph, the pink sweater in its plastic bag, and now my notebook filled with his own damning words. Look, Mom, I said, pointing at the photograph. This is the photo I found in Daniel's drawer in my previous life. Vivian was already pregnant then, look at her belly. And this sweater, I touched the plastic bag, I found it on his sofa last night. It has her lipstick on the collar. And now we have his own words, written down, admitting his plan to cheat me out of the compensation. These are all weapons. When we go to the regiment, we won't just be a divorced woman crying. We'll have proof. We'll have evidence that can't be denied. My mother picked up the photograph. Her hands were shaking with anger. She stared at the intimate pose, Vivian's smug smile, Daniel's possessive arm. That viper, she spat, using a term of abuse reserved for the worst kind of woman. You suffered for 3 years in the countryside for him, and he was getting her pregnant. I'm going to tell Mrs. Zhang. I'm going to tell Sister Lai. I'm going to tell everyone in this compound exactly what kind of man Commander Chen really is. Don't rush, Mom, I said, pulling her back gently. Not yet. If we just gossip, it becomes he said, she said. Daniel will deny everything, and people will think we're just a bitter, divorced woman and her angry mother. We need to let him dig his own grave first. Let him delay the payment. Let him move Vivian in. Let him get cocky. The more rope we give him, the more he'll hang himself. Then when the time is right, we'll go to the political commissar. We'll bring Mrs. Zhang and Sister Lai with us, not as gossips, but as witnesses. My mother stared at me for a long moment. Then slowly, the anger in her face was replaced by a grim, admiring smile. You're playing a long game, aren't you? I'm playing the only game that works, Mom. Over the next few days, I didn't hide in my apartment. I went about my business with a quiet dignity that spoke louder than any tantrum. I cleaned my small home. I hung freshly washed laundry on the line in the yard, my son's little shirts, my own worn blouses. I went to the communal kitchen to boil water, nodding politely to the other women. And I watched. Every day, I saw Vivian Lee coming to Daniel's apartment. She no longer bothered to hide. Her belly was now visibly rounded beneath her thick, padded winter coat. Sometimes, Daniel would escort her to the supply and marketing co-op. He would carry her bags, holding her arm as if she were made of porcelain. He bought her cans of malted milk powder, the expensive imported kind that was supposed to be for sick old people and weak infants. He bought her sweet, flaky pastries from the bakery. He bought her a new pair of soft, red leather shoes. All with his military allowance. The allowance that was supposed to support his legal wife and his firstborn son. Meanwhile, he hadn't even mentioned the 50 yuan compensation to me. Not a word. Not a single solitary copper coin. One afternoon, I was sitting by the window in my apartment, sewing a button onto a shirt. The winter light was fading, casting long gray shadows across the floor. I heard a soft knock on my door. Not Daniel's heavy, impatient fist. A lighter, more tentative knock. I opened the door. Vivian Lee stood there. She was wearing a brand new, floral print padded coat, the height of urban fashion. Her pregnancy was unmistakable now. In her hands, she held a wicker basket covered with a red checkered cloth, the kind people used to bring gifts. A false saccharine smile was plastered on her pretty crescent moon-eyed face. Sister Lisa, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I'm Vivian Lee. I heard about the divorce. I felt so terrible. I just had to come and see how you were doing. I didn't move from the doorway. I didn't invite her in. No thanks, Comrade Lee. I'm fine. You should go back to your own business. I started to close the door. Oh, Sister Lisa, don't be so cold. She pushed past my arm, her shoulder digging into mine, and stepped into my apartment. The audacity of it took my breath away for a second. She looked around at my sparse, clean home with an expression of pitying condescension. I know you don't feel good about this. I understand. But matters of the heart, you can't force them. You and Daniel. You just weren't right for each other. It happens. She turned to face me, placing a hand deliberately on her rounded belly. Her smile grew wider, more triumphant. He and I, we truly love each other. And now, she patted her stomach, I'm carrying Daniel's child. A son, the doctor says. I'm going to take very good care of him. I'll give him a complete, happy family. Everything a child needs. I watched her smug, self-satisfied performance. The way she looked at my simple furniture, my worn clothes. The way she stroked her belly as if it were a trophy. and I felt a cold, cleansing wave of anger wash over me. It didn't burn. It sharpened me. Vivian, I said, my voice low and even. Don't get too comfortable. Don't get too cocky, her smile faltered. Do you really think Daniel loves you? I continued, taking a step closer to her. He doesn't love you. He loves the idea of a son. He wants a male heir. He wants to give the child in your belly a legitimate status. That's all you are to him, Vivian. A vessel. An incubator, the color drained from her face. That's not true, she whispered. And all those nice things he's been buying you, I gestured toward her new coat, the expensive basket. The malted milk, the pastries, the red shoes. He's buying them with his army allowance. The allowance that is supposed to support me and my child. The allowance that he is using to pay for your luxuries instead of paying me the 50 yuan he owes me. That money was for my son's food, for his school fees. And you're drinking it in malted milk. I took another step closer, my voice dropping to a near whisper. Do you feel good about that, Vivian's? Do you feel proud? Because you shouldn't. You're not a mistress. You're a thief. You're stealing food from a child's mouth. I don't know anything about any compensation, Vivian stammered, her composure crumbling. Her eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape. Don't talk nonsense. Daniel never said anything about. If you think I'm lying, you can ask him yourself, I said, cutting her off. I walked to the door and opened it wide, the cold air rushing in. Please leave, Comrade Lee. You are not welcome in my homes. And don't come back. You are an embarrassment to yourself, to Daniel, and to the uniform he wears. Go home and think about what you've done. Vivian stood frozen for a moment, her face a mask of shock and humiliation. Her lower lip trembled. She wanted to say something cutting, something to reclaim her dignity, but the words wouldn't come. Finally, she snatched her basket from the table, clutched it to her chest, and fled, her new red shoes clattering on the concrete steps. I closed the door. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I hadn't even raised my voice. The next day, the laundry room in the compound was unusually crowded. It was a small, steamy space with concrete troughs and a single large cast-iron boiler for heating water. It was also the compound's unofficial news bureau. I carried a large basket of dirty clothes, sheets, towels, my son's small pants, and walked in. Mrs. Zhang was there, scrubbing a pair of her husband's work trousers on a washboard. Sister Lai, a thin, sharp-faced woman who knew everyone's business, was rinsing out a wool sweater. Sister Wang, a newer resident, was just filling her bucket with hot water from the boiler. As soon as I stepped inside, the conversation, which had been a low murmur, stuttered and stopped. Then it resumed, but in a different key. Did you see? Sister Lai said, not looking at me but wringing water from the sweater with a loud, juicy schloop. Oh, yesterday. Commander Chen went to the co-op with that woman again. I saw them myself. He bought 2 whole cans of malted milk and a big piece of floral cloth. For the baby, I heard him say. For the baby, she snorted. Who in this compound doesn't know the commander's allowance is only a few dozen yuan a month? Where is that money coming from, Mrs.? Zhang, who was hanging a sheet on the line strung across the room, chimed in, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Oh, don't you know? Money grows on trees for some people, especially when they're not paying what they owe. She shot a pointed look in my direction. I carried my wash basin over to the trough next to Mrs. Zhang sighed a long, weary sound. Please, Mrs. Zhang's sister Lai, I said, my voice soft and sad. Don't say things like that. Maybe Commander Chen really has difficulties. I began to rub soap into a dirty sheet, my movements slow and heavy. A few days ago, I added, as if thinking out loud, I asked around at the commune about the return-to-work jobs. The director said. I paused, biting my lip. Said what? Sister Wang asked, her eyes wide. I lowered my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. He said that someone from the regiment had already asked about a priority placement for a comrade Vivian Lee. They said she was in a delicate condition and needed a stable job to support her pregnancy. The laundry room fell silent. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of water from the sheets. Mrs. Zhang was hanging. Sister Lai stopped wringing her sweater. He's getting her a job. A priority job. While you, his legal wife, the mother of his child, the woman who spent 3 years in the countryside, are left with nothing, Mrs. Zhang slammed her washboard down into the trough. That's not just wrong, she declared, her face flushed with righteous anger. That's corruption. The return policy is clear. It's for military families. She's not a military family. She's a homewrecker. Yeah, Sister Lai agreed immediately. And for a pregnant single woman to get a job over a legitimate divorced mother with a child. It's an insult to every wife who ever followed her husband to the middle of nowhere. I put on my most aggrieved expression, working the soap into the sheet, creating a cloud of white bubbles. I don't even know if it's true, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I just overheard it. I'm not trying to steal a job from anyone. It's just with a child to feed and clothe and send to school and no income of my own, it's hard. Daniel promised me 50 yuan compensation. I pulled the divorce certificate from my pocket, unfolded it, and held it out for them to see. Look, right here, in black and white. The husband, Daniel Chen, voluntarily gives up custody of the child and agrees to compensate the wife, Lisa Chen, in the amount of 50 yuan. It's signed. It's stamped. But now I let my voice trail off. He hasn't paid you, Sister Wang asked, her jaw dropping. He says the regiment's funds are tight, I said, folding the certificate and putting it away. He says to wait until next month. We've already been waiting nearly half a month. The laundry room erupted. 50 yuan is nothing compared to what you've sacrificed, Mrs. Zhang boomed. And he's spending that same money on fancy milk powder for his mistress. I've seen the cans in his garbage. Sister Lai slammed her hand on the edge of the trough. We have to stand up for Lisa. We have to say something. If he can get away with this, what's to stop any of our husbands from doing the same? We should go to the political commissar ourselves, Sister Wang added, emboldened by the crowd. We'll tell him exactly what's going on in this compound. I grabbed Sister Lai's arm, my eyes wide with feigned fear. Please, Sister Lai, don't go to any trouble for me. What if Daniel finds out? What if he holds a grudge against all of you? I couldn't bear it if any of you got into trouble because of me. I said it aloud, but inside I was smiling. The spark had been lit. The gossip was no longer just gossip. It had been given a target, Daniel's financial dishonesty, and a righteous cause, justice for a wronged wife. The fire would spread on its own now. And it did. That afternoon, the rumors ran through the compound like wildfire. I stood on my small balcony, ostensibly hanging laundry but really just listening. I could hear the whispers floating up from the yard below, little groups of military families huddled together, their heads bent, their voices low and urgent. Not only cheated on her and got that Lee woman pregnant, but he's also stiffing Lisa on the compensation, and now he's trying to get the mistress a priority job at the factory. While Lisa has nothing, if he succeeds, what justice is left for the rest of us? We're all military wives. We all made sacrifices. We should bring this up at the next family meeting. The political commissar needs to know what kind of man he's promoting. I hung a pair of my son's small pants on the line, smoothing out the wrinkles with my hand. I realized Daniel Chen had probably heard the stir of talk already. The compound was small. News traveled faster than the winter wind. That night when Daniel came home from the regiment, his face was so dark, so rigid with suppressed fury, that it looked like water could drip from it. He didn't look up at my windows. He didn't nod at the neighbors. He walked straight to his door, his steps heavy and furious. As he passed my door, his steps faltered for just a second. I imagined him on the other side of the thin wood, wanting to say something, to threaten me, to demand I stop the rumors. But then he noticed the eyes of the neighbors on him, Mrs. Zhang standing on her porch with her arms crossed, Sister Lai watching from her kitchen window. He lowered his head, unlocked his door, and hurried inside. He didn't even dare to slam it. The next morning, I woke early. I dressed in my best clothes, a simple dark blue cotton jacket and a matching pair of trousers. I combed my hair neatly and pinned it back. I wanted to look respectable, trustworthy, not like a wronged woman seeking revenge, like a concerned citizen seeking justice. I went to the commune to submit my son's registration papers for the local primary school. I needed to get him enrolled as soon as he returned from the countryside. As I reached the entrance of the low, gray commune building, I saw two familiar figures coming out. Daniel Chen and Vivian Lee. Vivian had her arm looped through Daniel's, her body pressed close to his. Her face was glowing with satisfaction, a cat who had swallowed the canary. Daniel was holding a single sheet of paper, an official-looking form with the commune's seal at the bottom. A job application. It had been approved. When Vivian saw me, her triumphant smile froze for a moment. Then she deliberately lifted her chin, pushed her pregnant belly forward even more, and raised her voice so the people walking by could hear. Daniel, let's go home now. I'm feeling a little tired. The baby is kicking. I need to rest. Daniel's eyes flickered to me for a fraction of a second. Then he looked away, his face hardening. He didn't say a word. He just started to pull Vivian away toward the path that led back to the compound. I didn't let them. I stepped forward, blocking their way. My heart was pounding, but my voice was calm, clear, and just loud enough for the people around us to hear. Commander Chen, I said, holding up my own copy of the divorce certificate. Before you go, I believe we need to have a conversation. About the compensation, Vivian's face tightened. Daniel's jaw clenched. I have no objection, I continued, my voice steady as a rock, to you helping Comrade Lee get a job. That's your business. But don't forget, I tapped the certificate with my finger, this document. It clearly states that you owe me 50 yuan. That money is for my child's living expenses. For his food. For his school fees. You cannot spend your army allowance buying malted milk and new coats for your mistress while leaving your own son to starve. Or do you have a different definition of army discipline than the rest of us? People walking by began to slow down. They stopped. They stared. A small crowd was forming. I saw a man in a worker's uniform nudge his companion and whisper. A woman with a shopping bag covered her mouth with her hand. Daniel's face flushed a deep, ugly crimson. He tried to step around me to push past. This is a private matter, he hissed. You're making a public scene. But before he could move, a door in the commune building opened and a middle-aged man in a dark blue Mao jacket stepped out. It was Director Liu, the man in charge of the return-to-work program. He had been the one who had told me in confidence about Vivian's job application. Comrade Chen, Director Liu said, his voice stern, his eyes moving from Daniel's face to Vivian's pale one then to mine. Is there a problem here? No problem, Director, Daniel said quickly, trying to regain his composure. Just a personal disagreement. Director Liu's eyes fell on the divorce certificate in my hand. He had seen it before when I had first applied for the job. He frowned. The return to city work policy, he said, his voice loud enough for the crowd to hear, is intended to help families in need. Especially single mothers with children. They are to be given priorities. Even if Comrade Lee, he said the name with obvious distaste, has special circumstances, rules are rules. No one receives special treatment based on personal relationships. He looked Daniel directly in the eye. And as for the 50 yuan compensation written into your divorce certificate, that is a legal obligation. It should be paid on time. That's not just policy. That's basic human decency. Daniel stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. He had no answer. The crowd was watching. Vivian was shrinking behind him, her face as white as the snow on the ground. Finally, he shot me a look of pure, venomous hatred, the first honest emotion he had shown me in years, and dragged Vivian away. As they hurried off, Vivian turned back to look at me once. Her eyes were full of spite, but also something new, fear. She knew now that I was not the doormat she had imagined. She didn't dare say a word. Director Liu watched them go, then shook his head sadly. He turned to me, his expression softening. Comrade Lisa, he said quietly. Don't worry. The commune will handle your return-to-work matter fairly. You have all the right qualifications. And as for the compensation, he lowered his voice. I will speak to Comrade Chen personally. I will make sure he understands his obligations. Thank you, Director Liu, I said, bowing my head slightly. I only want what is fair. For my son, I walked home, my heart feeling lighter than it had in years. The power of public opinion was a formidable weapon. The commune director was on my side. The neighbors were buzzing. Daniel and Vivian's little bubble of illicit happiness was starting to leak. I was no longer fighting alone. If you've enjoyed walking this journey of revenge and rebirth with RED Reborn English Drama, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to keep creating and bringing more powerful stories to life. Every comment means a lot and helps the channel grow stronger each day. Thank you for listening, and I can't wait to see you in the next story.